been a while since I did a what I'm reading video, and since then I've bought a ton of books and I've got nothing to do, and it is almost 8 a.m. I haven't slept because I have no work tomorrow and I am insomniatic. Is that the word? So let's do this video. First book I've been reading and I've almost finished is this one, Tom Clancy, Red Storm Rising. Basically, it's Tom Clancy. I'm sure you know him. He is the guy who makes all these stories about these high intensity political warfare type things. He got famous for The Hunt for Red October, which is about a submarine. Obviously I read that. I love submarines, and then I picked this up as a recommendation following that. And basically it's about Russia had a terrorist attack from, surprise surprise, a band of Muslims, and then they blew up Russia's oil pipelines or something, and then Russia got screwed because they think like, okay, now we've totally lost all our oil production, now we need to capture this piece of land, but now we need to somehow justify our invading this area to steal that oil. And then obviously shit goes haywire. I mean, look at the size of this book. The amount of stuff that happens in this book is, it's basically World War III. And the Russians are the bad guys, and then the NATO forces are the good guys. And then it's just a ton of shit happens in here. It's just out and out warfare with tanks, fighter jets, submarines, boats, troops. And then basically, as Tom Clancy tends to do, it's sort of, how do you call that thing where
3 days later.
What do you call that thing where you have like a cast, but then they all play an equal role in the story? So it's not like one character dominates, you know, there's no just one protagonist. So they all play a role. So there's like 3 or 4 narratives that are going on here. So you got like the communist general, and then you got like the pilots, and then you got like the land troops who end up in Reykjavik, and then it's just a complete action-packed thing. I mean, it's a thick book, but you go by it so fast. It's really enjoyable. Some of Tom Clancy's things are a bit dull. Too much talking, not enough action. But this has a ton of action. If you've played the games Call of Duty Modern Warfare, basically it's like this. This could be a Call of Duty game. The second book I'm reading is called Gyo by Junji Ito. If you remember my review, I did Uzumaki for that review, and this is Gyo, and basically he does 3. He's got 3 stories that he's really well known for: Gyo, Uzumaki, and then Tomi. Tomi I've got sitting over there on my shelf, but I haven't got through all of it yet. Gyo is basically about this sort of alien virus slash machinery that comes out of the ocean, right? So you have like this sort of semi-autonomous, semi-self-aware robotic platform with 4 legs, sort of like a spider, that it captures a living animal, human, animal, fish, whatever, and then it sort of injects it with a virus, and that virus basically turns it into this rotten corpse, which is sort of alive, that produces these gases, and these gases sort of A, infect others, and B, sort of drive the machine. And then it's sort of like how this machine virus wants to spread itself. If you've watched that really corny film with Jamie Lee Curtis from the 90s called Virus, it's like that. I actually like this film, even though it's so corny. Basically, yeah, these things come out of the ocean, and about that much into the book, half the planet is infected, and then it's like, what the hell do we do now? The artwork in the story, I'll put some up on the screen for you to watch. It's really graphic. The first impression you get from this book is that everything stinks. There's in so many of the scenes here, you see these lines which depict bad smells, basically, and these graphic images of the rotting corpses and decaying bodies from the ocean. Very Lovecraftian, if you remember Dagon. And it's also a lot about how humans are killed and turned into, almost raped, in order to be subservient to these machines. And it's just so bloody disgusting. And it's such a, you really don't want to be a character in the story. It's just so disgusting. Junji Ito really did a great number in that story. If you're going to buy one Junji Ito book, you might as well buy all three. Just saying, he's brilliant there, and there's no mistaking that. The third book, I've been reading, actually 2 books by the same author, it's Clark Ashton fucking Smith. He needs no introduction if you're watching this channel. Clark Ashton Smith, he's different from Lovecraft, that's for sure. But they complement each other, right? It's sort of like a case of opposites attract. One is better at the other thing than the other. I said that completely incorrectly, didn't I? So I got 2 books, basically. They're both anthologies of short stories. This one's just short stories, and this one's published by Chaosium, who do the Call of Cthulhu RPG. And this one's just a Penguin book, but this one's got poetry and prose poems as well. As well as short stories. Clark Ashton Smith, oh my god, he deserves his own video. But briefly, where Lovecraft was more about realism, right? He had these realistic settings like Arkham, Innsmouth. These are all real places in New England, and then something otherworldly, an alien comes in and fucks everyone's day up. That's what Lovecraft is like, and Clark Ashton Smith is a lot more about fantastical worlds, with wizards and these alien continents which have nothing comparable to the real world. So that's the biggest difference between Lovecraft and Smith, is that, Lovecraft, he grounds everything in actual reality that you can relate to, and then Clark Ashton Smith, his worlds are so alien and fantastical that sometimes I struggle to imagine it. Like, he'll describe one continent that he keeps referring to as Hyperborea, and then you just, what is Hyperborea, right? It's like if I said Arkham, and then you think, oh yeah, that's 1920s New England area. I can't guess what that looks like. Now if I tell you Hyperborea, well, what the fuck's Hyperborea? But so that was a bit of a struggle for me to get into this. But once you get into Clark Ashton Smith, he's really quite enjoyable. He's much more flowery and loose with his descriptions. He's not so stereotypical like Lovecraft is. Not that I'm bad-mouthing Lovecraft, he's still #1. But his Clark Ashton Smith stories are really enjoyable. If you're into Lovecraft, you have to read a couple of Clark Ashton Smith stories, and basically there's 2 types. He has a couple that he does set in the Lovecraft mythos, and I'm sure he did that because him and Lovecraft were such tight friends, so they sort of included each other's works. I mean, this is the guy that invented Tsathoggua, the Book of Ibon, and those are all staples in the Lovecraft mythos, so you have to read some of these works. Between the 2, get this one because it shows also the poetry, and it's an introduction by S.T. Joshi, and that's a great thing. The 4th book I'm reading, and I've gotten maybe 25% of the way through, is this. This is Robert Lowe's The Whale Road, and this is about Vikings. Yes, fucking Vikings, man. I got this as a book recommendation from The Golden One.
Robert Lowe with this series. That series right there. And it's the typical, it's very interesting, typical good old epic Viking adventure novel. Don't really have much to add on it. I just thought gives a good insight in the time period, and also creates that classic epic saga. So if you want a dose of Vikingness in your life, I would very much recommend this book series.
Now that's a YouTube channel you have to check out. He's about weightlifting, politics, and he does the occasional book review and also book recommendations. And he's all about Vikings and epic testosterone-filled adventures and that sort of stuff. It's very cool. I'll put a link on the video description about that. Basically, the story tells of a young boy in a Viking village, and then he ends up actually joining a Viking clan because everyone believes he actually killed a polar bear, but he did it by accident, you know. But everyone thinks now he's a hero, so he has to join these Vikings, and it's all about him coming from a boy to being a man. It's really great, very fun read. You burn through this book very quickly. You just page after page. Really cool. Final book I'm reading is this one, Tales of Unease by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And basically, this book blew me away. I love this book so much, man. I'm taking it everywhere with me, and I finished it completely. And every short story in here is just amazing. Basically, it's weird fiction. And it's weird fiction with usually a horror tinge to it, you know. So basically, it's some of these stories could be fucking Lovecraft stories. I'm not joking. It's got that old-timey language that Lovecraft used to always employ in his stories. Similar writing style, even at times. And then the subject matter is always weird things. You got some stories here which are about Egyptian mummies and that sort of stuff, and we all know how Lovecraft was fascinated by Egyptians. Then you got this one story that I really liked called I think it was this one, The Horror from the Heights, The Horror of the Heights, which was about this discovered journal that was covered in blood, and then it turned out that this was coming from a crash site of a plane, but then the pilot explains how there's something horrific up in the air. See, this was the time when flight was just being discovered, so you know how old the book is. And then it's all about this guy that set the flight record, but he discovers something horrific above the clouds, something very alien, very fucking Lovecraftian. It's a great storybook, great collection of literature here. There's no Sherlock Holmes, so this is basically Arthur Conan Doyle. Yeah, he's a Sherlock Holmes guy, but he also wrote a ton of short stories with horror themes in the weird fiction style, and this book is a great compilation of those. I really recommend this if you like Lovecraft and weird fiction. This is a must, this book. Really. Get it. It's great. Anyway, that's one more video down. See you again in a few months, I guess, considering the rate that I make these videos. Adios.